Hi, I'm Dan Crothers. Welcome to Unity of Beaverton. I have a very special guest today, Jason Gomes, who loves science, but he also loves spirituality, and he loves unity for that reason. So we're going to engage in a discussion about science and about how it relates to spiritual things. One of the things that science has been doing for years is trying to come up with an understanding of the whole thing, not just separate little religious ideas or religions and science, but rather science is a conglomeration of all of it into a complete understanding. So, Jason, how's that sound as an introduction for what we're going to be talking about?
It sounds just as general as kind of what we're going to be talking about, which is probably good. I guess to say that in another way, when they were looking at quantum mechanics initially, is really when they started breaking down the barrier between what was physical reality and what was energy. And it's kind of that particle, which is that physical thing that we can observe. That's your body, that's my body, and it's that wave of energy that all particles sort of get enmeshed in. That's our relationship, which is non-physical. It's not something that I could crack open your brain and see how you think about me. It's something that you just kind of feel. And so it's kind of breaking into that idea of what unites both the physical and the non-physical aspects of all of reality, so that people can understand how to bring that into harmony, how to bring your physical body into harmony with your thoughts and your feelings, which is that wave, that non-solid, that non-defined aspect of you that we just normally call consciousness. So that's the idea of what spirit science is all about, is understanding how consciousness, which is that flowing energy that's going through you, that circulation that we call your blood, and how that relates to the person that you are. And how that relates to the actions that you take. So the class that I'll be teaching here, which is the 6 Seeds to Heaven, breaks down a path of how you go from shaping your emotional state, to shaping your mind, to shaping your body, to shaping your influence that you have over yourself as well as other people. And I think ultimately, that's the direction that we need to go, because looking at the world, I'm sure you can see that there are a lot of things that are kind of in clash right now, especially. I mean, it's kind of like we have a reality TV show president, and sort of kind of going like, what's going on? And I think that's really what will allow people to kind of come into their own creative potential and kind of realize what it is that they need to be focusing on with their own lives. But to break it down, the idea phi, Fibonacci sequence, which is in everything, it's kind of the cornerstone when you're looking at electromagnetism, how it moves, sound, how it moves. It's found in your body, both in the ratios of your limbs and your arms and your face, but also inside of your body, within the vascular system. So the whole idea of spirit science is saying, following that trail of breadcrumbs that shows you this is what phi is doing on the atomic level, here it is on the genetic level, here it is on the cellular level, how it relates to your body with your vascular system and the various size veins in your body, and how your vascular system relates to you. Because, as you live and breathe, how blood circulates through your body is your experience. I mean, have you ever been in the presence of somebody and just really irritated by them for whatever reason? And it's not like you're necessarily even mad at them, but you're just sort of like, I really don't want to be in the presence of this person right now. And teaching people how to deal with that. So not only how the body is formed, but how you can transform. And it really starts with music. That's the cornerstone of all transformation, is because just like if you had a theme song playing right now. It's dun 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 dun. It sets an expectation for what you think will happen next based on no evidence other than that feeling that you get. So that's one of the first things that I wanted to kind of make the cornerstone, is because they've been saying it for a very, very long time. And it's the reason why it was so integral to every religious movement around the world is music. It doesn't really matter where you're at. It's part of their praising process. And that praise is like strengthening your integrity, which is essentially what it's doing. So have you ever listened to a song and it just really changed the way that you were feeling in that moment?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's kind of tapping into the power of emotional transformation that music has over the human body, and understanding it well enough to use it as a tool. Because, a chisel is just a sharp knife until you understand how it can shape something. And then you can make, the most amazing sculptures that will last thousands of years, as the Greeks, displayed that they had mastery over that ability to shape. And I think that ultimately that's what my goal is, to teach people, is how do you bring yourself from any particular point and transform yourself from the inside out, because it is emotionally transformative. That's the most important thing, because there's a lot of people, and it's very evident, especially in our country, where suicide is prevalent to the upper class. When you were to look at that factor, actually the highest rates is in the wealthiest people. And I think that has a lot to do with the way that we're engineered in this country, sort of from the outside in, of look the part, and then you'll feel successful. But when people don't feel that success, do I have a little? Sorry about that. They don't know what to do. They don't know what to do, because everything is kind of aggrandizing the material success and the physical success, but it doesn't really cultivate that inner success, the inner engineering that allows you to feel that you're on the right path, that allows you to feel connected with the people that you're involved with in all forms of relationship, whether it's business, whether it's family, whether it's partners. And so it's kind of the concept of how do you apply science to living? How do you apply that concept of always searching to get better to actually the experience of life, not just the observation of it. And that's ultimately what I'm really excited for, and hopefully I'll have continued opportunities for in the future. But I'm not sure. Did you have any specific questions for me?
Well, let's. Several things have come to mind. One, before I left, a friend of mine comes to me and he says that he had a genetic test done, and they're able to divide it all the way down to there's this the kind of chemicals you have in your body. You have this, and he said that one of his genes produces more neurotoxins in his brain than usual. And so therefore he would run into problems, because genes do shape our energies and behaviors in our lives. Maybe you can overcome it, but that's still a debatable subject. It's a well-known fact that the genes control whether you're going to have a heart attack, or more propensity to have a heart attack than not, or like I have a gene that gave me diabetes. But it doesn't mean I have to have diabetes, but yet I have more of a tendency to do that. So, and then the other thought that came to mind was there's opposites in nature. Everything is in opposites, because in order for matter to exist, it has to be balanced to zero. Everything balances to zero. There's a thing spinning at this way, there's another one spinning the other way. And when you have them together in the same space, they make a zero. They make balance. So if we're looking at what you were saying, the social structure of the United States right now, it seems like we had one kind of personality behavior happening, And now we've got a whole different one coming, and it's causing a reaction over here. And then they're going, oh, wait, we got to balance this out. Oh, my gosh. So this fight for balance is really where it's at. And so you're saying you would like to understand all the elements involved so that you can be present and in balance and not get out of balance. And then you say, let's become better people. What you're meaning is, let's have understanding that can work with whatever it is to produce the best result.
Absolutely. And you're right on both accounts. As far as the genetics are concerned, one of the misnomers for genetics and genetic theory was essentially before epigenetics, they only understood the mechanics of this is what's present, but they didn't understand how it was being utilized. In the 80s, when they did genetics, they actually said 98% of genes were junk. Anybody who's taken apart anything, if you took 98% of the parts out, even if you thought they did nothing, you would find that whatever it is that you put together with 2% of the parts probably isn't going to function the same. And the thing to keep in mind is your memory consciously is infinitesimally smaller than your body's memory. So when you're talking about genes, when you're talking about cancers, there are things that your body remembers, like your body remembers what your great-great-great-great-grandmother's nose looked like, but you don't. And so there are definitely going to be impediments when you know, that whole idea of inheriting the sins of the father. You're inheriting all of the conscious and unconscious memory of your parents, consciously by what they teach you, by what they train you, how they raise you, the kind of environment they put you in, and unconsciously, which is all the changes that they've made to their body, both positive and negative, that they weren't even really ultimately aware of. And what they've shown is that even if you have a specific set of genetics, you can have varying personalities which utilize those genetics differently. Because if you look at anything, when you're talking about energy, it gets more and more and more subtle. That's how it achieves balance. Is you imagine you have high, low, and it gets closer and closer and closer and closer and closer and closer until you get to that balancing point. Well, the higher the state of harmony, the more balanced it becomes. So your same friend that has a genetic problem, and again, that could be partially genetic and partially the fact that his parents had a lot of the same habits that create a lot of the same results. Similar,
Right.
but not the same.
Now, I'm an adopted child. I was an orphan until approximately 6 years old, and got adopted out and grew up, and then I found my real parents later on in life. And what I found out for my real father, whom I didn't know until then, was not only did I look like him, but he was a professional musician, which I am, and all of his behavioral traits, his spiritual cognitions of reality, a deep thinker about spiritual things, identical to me. And then my son that I have is, in a sense, identical to me. But the only difference is that in my adopted family, they raised me from a different subset of beliefs and ideas. And so I put on my adopted dad's behavioral traits, which makes my son go, Dad, you know, he doesn't quite resonate with me then. But if he knew my real dad, he probably would totally resonate with him.
Yeah. Well, and it's if you imagine a radio and it's tuned to approximately the same frequency, that's essentially all you're talking about when you're looking at the physical body, is you're transceiving consciousness. They've even proven that the planet's resonance, the Schumann resonance, actually has a correlation to your brain. It is directly correlated to your imagination. So if you imagine your body as a transceiver, it's absorbing as you breathe in that charged atmospheric energy, and you breathe it out, you're going to be similar to a similar model without being exactly the same, even if you've never had any contact. Because again, you will have varying paths and differences based off your consciousness, but you're on the same trajectory because of the genetics. But the reality is that just like an instrument in the hands of somebody that doesn't have a patience to play it, it doesn't sound as well as the person who's invested in becoming better and invested in having that self-patience to accumulate skill sets.
Yeah, or the interest or the effect of what music does playing it.
Exactly.
Enriches me, for instance, but it might not enrich the other person. They're like, okay, I like listening to country music, but that's it.
Yeah. And the same thing is for diabetes. If you get a sense of fulfillment out of eating healthy, I mean, everybody does, but to different degrees, just like you were saying with music.
Yeah.
You could have just easily have full-blown diabetes and missing a foot right now if you didn't have the conscious desire to do something about it. Because it's very easy to say, oh, that's genetically what I'm predisposed to. But it is a disposition,
right,
not a decision.
Yeah. Now, the decision I make is when I become consciously aware that I have a propensity towards getting obese and getting heart disease and diabetes, I'll quit eating this stuff. Now I have that choice, that ability. Actually, the only free will I have is to be able to make a choice in the gap and say, wait, no, I'm not going to eat gluten and fattening foods and all of that. I'm going to change that. And that, of course, is what has saved my life, literally.
Oh,
being able to have conscious choice and making those conscious choices.
And that's a big part of the reason why in the 6 Seeds of Heaven I included the nutritional portion. Just say, like, yes, this is about spirit, it's about energy, but the types of chemicals that are in your body determine how energy flows through your body. Just like only some chemicals will make batteries, and some chemicals will make the opposite of batteries. They absorb and they don't emit, right, energy. So it's just about maintaining that idea that all these things, it's like a symphony that's supposed to be in balance, and everybody is going to have different levels of performance at different aspects and different natures of genius, because that's the reality, is that the healthiest body that you could have will give you the highest amount of potential, but you're going to have a different potential than me, and she's going to have a different potential than us. And that's because that's what genetic variance allows us to do. Yes, there's going to be some points where you're lower over here and higher over here, and vice versa. And so there's always going to be give and take. Anytime you have enough genetic variances, you're going to have some weak points, some strong points. But it's about getting people the information so that they can, in whatever body they're in, make it the strongest body, make it the healthiest body, based on sort of the general maintenance guides. And that's why it's all about nutrition and just very basic understanding of yoga, which is that connection, that unity between the mind and the body and the emotion and the breath. And then so that's kind of ties into a lot of what people are kind of in need of, is the ability to self-regulate emotion, because that's a very big part of all disease, is the inability to regulate emotion. And I mean that as dis-ease. Ease is the natural way, it's natural order. Everything in nature happens almost as if it's effortless. And we've kind of fallen away from that, and fallen away from that natural state of harmony, and sort of become diseased about many things, psychological things, future events that may or may not even happen, as well as the physical dis-ease that's caused by, atmospheric conditions and environmental disruptions, as much as other individuals. And so I think that as more and more people learn to self-regulate, which is a big part of what spirit science is about, is like that circulating energy that's in your body, that is you. And circulating that energy in the most harmonious way possible is how you experience a lens, like you're pulling it in. So your lens is clean and clear, without any scratches from preconceived notions, without any filth from personal guilt or shame, so that you can experience what's happening around you without any disclarity. And that's when people have the opportunity to get along better. That's when people have the opportunity to see one another for who they are, instead of just as the opposite of what I think. And I think that that's really a big part of the transition that's happening right now. There's cycles within cycles within cycles, and that's kind of the idea of harmonics, is you just have bigger and bigger and bigger cycles. And one of the things that's really interesting when you look at esoterics in Eastern religions, they have these greater cycles kind of incorporated into their history. Sort of like the Mayans, how they had December 21st, 2012 was the apocalypse. Well, I mean, even in Western religion, apocalypse just means revelation. But when you look at the cosmology behind that, there is actually a larger cycle that our sun goes around as it's traveling around the galaxy. So just like we experience different seasons, as we experience different orientations and distances from the sun itself, based on the angle and the rotation, we get seasons. And they're not even small differences. I mean, the difference between winter and spring in some areas is enormous. It doesn't even look like the same location. If you've never experienced the change of a season, and they dropped you in, Boston in the spring, and they dropped you in Boston in the winter, you would think they were two different places, because they're so dramatically different in their energy, and in how the energy circulates and how it manifests. And so that's what we're coming into, is these larger cycles that are like 26,000 years long. And essentially, that would mean relatively, like if you were to put that in a 365-day cycle, that means every day of this greater cycle is about 72 years. So about one human lifetime for every single day, which means that we, in our younger cultures in the West, don't really have an inclination to believe that it's going to be dramatically different. Because if you go back through history for, hundreds of years or thousands of years, you're only going back a few weeks. You're still in the dead of winter. And so we're coming into this springtime of consciousness, and we're beginning to realize more and more and more and more about how the universe functions, and how it balances itself, like you said. And we're becoming more aware and awake of our influence, of how what we think and feel has an influence on what happens around us. And just recently, they've had a thing going around on Facebook for the Schumann resonance, because the Schumann resonance is peaking, highest points that they've seen since they started recording it in 1951. So this resonance that's related to the human imagination is reaching higher and higher levels that are normally associated with alert, awake consciousness. So we're literally coming out of a state of dreamlike, not really taking responsibility, to being more awake, being more alert, and starting to come into the realization that there's a need to take responsibility. Kind of like you wake up like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. And it's kind of, it really is. That's the urgency that people are feeling, that like we need to do something, we need to get up, we need to start moving forward. And so that's kind of what I want to do, is I just want to put something out there for people, so that they can understand how to achieve a better state of health for their mental health, and how music and meditation and affirmations, giving your brain that break to kind of realign itself.
With a musician, there's not only practicing but then there's learning what somebody else learned so that you can apply it towards music. And then there's putting your soul into it. There's overcoming fear, which affects one's self-expression of the music. And, you know, what makes a great musician versus somebody that when you listen to, you go, yeah, you know, okay, you're out. Get that other guy in here, you know, he knows how to do it. Whatever his mode, his lack of fear allows him to express more freely. Like the water, like you're saying, life is like water flowing effortlessly. But when it runs into fear or an obstruction, then things start backing up, and then the movements are awkward and
stagnation.
Right.
Nobody likes that.
Yeah. So life is like being a musician. I mean, we can apply each of the artistic skills: dance, yoga, music, poetry, writing. It's all about attaining to effortless expression in balance, that is aware of the balance and is able to bring from the depths this balance and self-expression, doesn't get held back. You know, who's the great artist that he just throws the bucket of paint on there and starts smearing it all over, and the whole secret is that you can't be obstructed in your movement. You can't go, I'm not sure about this, because as soon as you're not sure about that, that's the expression. I'm not sure about this. But yeah, bold and brave and free, that's what gets expressed in that art form. So when you look at it, you go, wow, that's just bold and free, and it reflects that nature. So life is like that, and I see that's what you're really saying is you're trying to be able to present a understanding of all these elements so that a person has the power of choice to create in harmony with this effortless growth into complexity. Maybe it gets complex, but so what? It's like, oh, look at that beauty, and look at this beauty.
Yeah.
Not, oh no, there's that thing.
Absolutely. I think that when you look at the body, you have like the fight or flight mode. And flight it's interesting because that's associated with fear, but it's kind of like it kills fear. Like the ability to fly is what makes birds so graceful. You know, it's because they can just rise above.
Yeah. But when you got the tiger chasing you, the fear gave them the energy and alertness necessary to escape death.
Yeah. Well,
and take the right action.
It's kind of it's like you get to the point of flying, and you get to see your life, and you get to actually look at it rather than feeling like you're stuck in it. And because the whole fight or flight mode, when people are operating from a sense of fear, you're in your brain. Your brain is good at calculating. Your brain is good at predicting. Your brain is good at a lot of things. But feeling comes from your heart. It comes from actually being involved in it without a sense of reservation,
right?
Like you're saying.
Yeah, exactly.
And understanding that your heart is what's centrally circulating. It is the powerhouse. It's the engine that creates all this circulation. And so it's, if you want to tap into harmonious circulation, which is harmonious living, it's all about the heart. And it's bringing people out of that sense of fear and overthinking and being overly analytical. And that's, I think, why I broke it down so clearly. So it's like, okay, here's your questions. Now you know how you're connected and why you're connected, and you don't need to be in fear of the fact that you're going to do something that's not supposed to happen. Because when you're in that heart-centered state, that's where you have your clearest ability to share energy with another person, the clearest ability to share creativity with another person, or expression with another person, or even within yourself. As you said, when you're creating from a place of love, from compassion, from generosity, from prosperity, that's where your highest work will come from. whether you're talking about building a family, or building anything, creating anything. That's where your highest expression comes from, is when you're able to feel comfortable and confident. And confidence comes from intelligence or wisdom, and comfort comes from a sense of enlightenment, of knowing that you're on the right path, or at least that you're doing the very best that you can. And that's what I want to be able to do for people, say, hey, here's the information so that you can do the best that you can, so that you don't have any excuses left for, I didn't know, or nobody told me. It's kind of like if you were born in the jungle instead of a concrete jungle, you would have parents that would give you instincts on how to survive with the planet. Now, if you survive with the planet, you survive with yourself, because the planet's always going to meet every need that you have. Otherwise, why would you be here? And so the idea is, it's like giving people instincts.
Well, we find out we need cooperation with others. I have this image stuck in my mind, caveman, and they're all going out to go get something to eat, and they know they got to kill something because they haven't learned how to grow vegetables yet, and so they're hungry. They got to go get something to eat. Well, at some point they learned that when the beast is coming at him out of his own self-preservation, if I could rely on my buddies, it's like learning to play music again. Okay, you know what you're going to do, you know what you're going to do. When it's coming at us, we could all be terrified and run and die, or we can meet the challenge. And fear being only that which alerts us to be able to make instantaneous movements and cooperate with our fellow man to achieve having dinner tonight, rather than being dinner.
Right.
But the world has become much more complex, as all things are becoming more complex. The other image that was on my mind is the coral. The coral starts out and it sticks up a couple of things, and then it grows, and then it sticks out another thing, and you were using that Fibonacci series. There's a pattern to how it keeps growing, and pretty soon you've got a coral reef, which in a sense, even though it's made up of individual parts, like individual beings, it's one great big huge organism in complexity. So humanity, being one organism, is continually growing and becoming more diverse. And so therefore our challenges are not just the beast coming at us. Okay, we got him? Yeah, we got him. But there's a whole bunch of other guys that are not in our clan that are trying to get the beast too, and now life just got more complex.
Yeah, and it really ultimately comes down to creating versus consuming. Because as human beings, I love the analogy that we're all part of one thing, especially when you look at like the Schumann resonance and the amount of interconnectedness that our minds all share. I like to use the analogy that we're like cells on a planet that's a planetary body.
Right.
And the difference between the human being and all the other different cells is we're like stem cells. We can heal anything, we can become anything, but stem cells are actually the bedrock of cancer. Every cancer cell is a stem cell. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So when you look at this same thing, you can have little chunks, groups that have grown and grown and grown and grown to create their own little sphere of influence, which would be a tumor. But when you look at the body as a collective, until we can all look at each other and say, you're a human, I'm a human, we're all part of the same body. And maybe you're the right hand, I'm the left hand. Am I going to try and convince? Would you try and say, well, I don't like my right hand because my left hand's so awesome? You wouldn't cut your right hand off, you'd just be left-handed. And I think that's really ultimately the understanding that people need to come to is, if you're in a body, there's not one type of cell. It's not like you're in a human body, oh, that's a human cell. No, there's bone cells, there's blood cells, there's white blood cells, there's nerve cells, there's liver cells, there's heart cells. All these different cells, they look different, They perform different functions and tasks, but they're collectively a part of the same body. And when we can stand in a position of harmony, it's just like if you're in a state of health. How much more can you do if you're in a state of health than if you're riddled with cancer, if you're riddled with autoimmune disorder, which essentially would be, the police or the military attacking your body instead of defending it, which we get a lot of that. So there's just a lot of disease in the body, but ultimately it's regenerated and healed by establishing a state of harmony on an individual level. So when people understand how to establish harmony within themselves, guess what? You're no longer going to be a part of a group of cancer cells, because it starts with that one that convinces a few more people, and they kind of gather and gather and gather, and they use debt and violence and ignorance primarily to accumulate more and more people into these groups that can be sort of herded around. But as more and more people look at that complexity, and rather than say, it's not about winning, it's about harmonizing. It's about trying to figure out how to get this group of people back into this body.
Right.
That would be like spontaneous remission. How do we spontaneously go into remission for all these people who have decided, because of their experience of reality, that they were somehow separate from either other people or the planet or creation, whatever, because they alienated themselves, or they were alienated by other people, and they sort of held on to that as their own personal truth. That's how we get these isolation. I mean, historically, just because we were separate. You were just in this part of the jungle, I was in this part of the jungle, we didn't even see each other our whole lives until one day, what are you doing here? But now it's been created both intentionally and unconsciously by divisions in culture more than anything. But with the advent of technology, there's really no reason why we couldn't highlight the benefits of every single culture on the planet, but we get kind of stuck on what's different.
I saw a program the other day. It was about children in the womb and what mom ate, and how does it affect the child afterwards when they're born and go through life. Canada had a severe ice storm that lasted for months, and the children that were born out of that had lower IQs, lower ability to function all through their entire life. So what happened during the womb, if there was a lot of stress or we didn't really have much food, all we ate was potatoes, it's going to affect how the child lives its entire life. And then they took the research further and found that kids that were had good raising, when they were in the womb, if they came out of the womb and then moved to America, for instance, where the food is fast food and all this stuff, GM foods and all that, the potential for them to get sick with all the diseases, including cancer, goes up like gastronomically. So how we're raised in the womb, if you eat right, if you're moved to another place in the world where it's a different diet, that how your constitution is will be affected by the different diet. And to different extents. Some people are raised in America and they're used to the junk food, and so, here's a 60-year-old guy eating a hamburger. It's like, dude, how can you manage to not get cancer eating this stuff?
Yeah.
But he seems to be okay. But if you were from India, you'd probably get cancer, in a short period of time.
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be differences, and there's going to be tolerances that are different from place to place. Just like your immune system, if back in the day you go from one place to another, and now you're at risk for all these sorts of diseases that this population over here has their immune system has bolstered them against those particular illnesses, and maybe half of them are even carrying it and they don't even know. Right. But I would absolutely say, nutrition is so important. Yep. When you're talking about it would be like if I was a general contractor and I tried to tell you that the materials that I used to build your house wasn't really that important as long as I followed the blueprints. Well, if I use gummy worms instead of nails, your house isn't going to stand for very long. And it's certainly the first windstorm that comes through, it's going to fall right over. So I would definitely say that when you're born, you're going to have a certain genetic inheritance from your parents as far as energy.
And affected
and
by
vitality.
what the mother was doing when you were in the womb beyond the genetics.
Well, and that's where your development is most critically dependent upon another person, because that's where, when you think about the growth from an egg to a baby, that's exponential growth.
Right, exactly.
That's the epitome of exponential growth. So those in the very, very early stages does absolutely set a tone and a precedent for all the other cellular growth.
Right.
And that's going to happen throughout your body because it started on day one.
Yeah, and mothers that didn't breastfeed their babies have deprived their child of needed cultural things, like the resistance disease, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
That mother's milk was made for the baby.
Yeah.
And if you didn't get it, and you grew up on the bottle of sugar water, basically, from the local store, their health is going to be damaged severely for the rest of their life.
Well,
I don't know why I'm heading in this direction. Why am I heading
it's an interesting thing, because everything that you are, your body, you accumulated over a period of time. So if you want to think in terms of health, you can think in terms of that which has been constructed or that which is creating, because there are two different aspects of you. Because that which is creating is the mental and the emotional aspect, and it's just like an instrument. The emotional aspect, essentially, like your cardiovascular system, your strings, they could be out of tune, and you could have a beautifully made instrument that's just so severely out of tune because you have never taken the time to tune it, or you don't know how. And you could also have, B.B. King's guitar just have holes in it.
Right, or Willie Nelson's.
It's
got
fallen apart, but
pieces of wood sticking out
because of his ability to play the guitar, which would be like the epigenetics versus the genetics. The knowledge of how to utilize that instrument is more important than the instrument that you have, because when you're talking about mental performance is fluid. They've already proven neuroplasticity, that any part of your brain can reform itself, and you can actually achieve high performance levels without a high IQ. And then, in fact, they showed there is no correlation, because as you repeat and repeat and repeat and you focus on getting better, your brain will rewire itself for the specific task. What they do with these intelligence tests is they just tell you, okay, your general intelligence. But that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean any specific performance. It doesn't mean any particular benefit. It's just how they decided to elevate some people and how they decided to degrade others, because there have been some of the best performers in a whole wide range of arenas that were, like, one of my favorites, Les Brown. He's a motivational speaker, and he's a millionaire now. He's very successful. He helps thousands, probably millions of people, and he was tested, and he was told that he was mentally retarded. And yet, because he stayed focused, because he was able to maintain his emotional state, everything else reshaped. His intelligence reshaped, his ability to speak publicly reshaped, his confidence level was reshaped. And so the idea is, like, yes, you can be dealt a bad hand, right? But that doesn't mean you have to play it poorly. And I think that's really where we need to focus, is because if everybody focuses on playing whatever hand they were dealt to the best of their ability, the next hand that's dealt is always going to be better, because the standard gets raised, the bar gets raised. And that's, everybody has the ability to improve. And if you're really down at the bottom, that means you literally have the most room for improvement.
Maybe having a weakness is a benefit, because it means you're not going to go that direction like everybody else went. You're going to go over here and get really good, because life is constantly growing. There's a direction always seeking to happen. So if you're not going to go the way everybody else is going, you're going to get better than everybody else at this over here, and then everybody will turn around and go, wow, that's really something else.
What's that?
Yeah, we like that. And then that influences the rest so that now they have a new avenue that they can explore. Now, I want to, and I'm not deviating from where we're going, but I want to bring clarity to what we're doing, where we're going. Mm-hmm. And I keep having this thought about life consciousness itself. Mm-hmm. I think of it in terms of a field, and maybe it's a resonance or, like the Schumann resonance you're talking about. Consciousness itself has this awareness of existence. Everything in it then affects it because it has a direction mm-hmm. to what it's up to. Like if it was survival, mm-hmm. It's going to learn to survive. I mean, what do you do when the bison's coming after you? Guys, okay, when you do this, do that, you'll learn how to deal with the situation. Now, somebody got real smart and said, hey, let's just build a thing, chase them all in there, and then they'll never ever come after us again. We got smarter. Mm-hmm. There's an intention. Mm-hmm. In fact, when I first met you, I think the first thing you were talking about was the intention. Mm-hmm. So there's this intention with consciousness, a direction that it's going. The expanding universe, well, it's learning, growing, adapting, learning new things, growing in that. Mm-hmm. So how do we apply that right now? Like I said, why am I talking about babies coming out of the womb and all that? I was curious about that, why I'm thinking that. And then being a musician, you have to learn to play, but then you have to learn to overcome self-consciousness so that you actually can play it in front of people without, messing up.
Yeah.
And using your training to create an experience. Mm-hmm. There it is. That's what I'm looking for. So the intention of life itself is to create diversity, but balance and bring joy, let's mm-hmm. say. Creativity is for the purpose of enjoying.
I think when you look at what you're saying, they have that dichotomy that, you have fear on one side and you have love on the other. You have chaos over here and you have integrity on the other. So integrity essentially is the same thing as harmony. It's creating a strength within a pattern. You're a pattern, I'm a pattern. What we sit in is a pattern. So there's an integrity that it's always trying to maintain. There's a certain amount of energy that it's always trying to maintain. It's always kind of like thermodynamics. It's always getting a little bit less, but we're trying to hold on to what's here. And I think that ultimately that's the direction of life, is the expression of integrity, of like the limitations of what's possible to survive is the expression of life. It's like these are the boundaries of our integrity, of our strength, of our love, of whatever you want to call that. And so when you're looking at the because anything that gets boring, that gets old, it's sort of like you immediately want to move away from it. You want a little bit of chaos with your integrity. That's why there's both, because there's always both. And if you try to have one or the other, that's where you find imbalance. Like we love watching movies because you go and watch a movie and there's things that are happening. It's exciting. You don't know who's going to live. You don't know who's going to die. You don't know what's going to happen next, but you're going to be okay. So it's what true meditators and the masters of consciousness essentially obtain is the ability to be the character in the movie and to watch it and experience it and to feel it, but also to have that thin layer of detachment of like, this is the physical reality, this is the play, and I'm this actor in this play, and behind that, I'm a spiritual presence, the observer. And it's just the smallest amount of separation that allows you to enjoy a movie. Because if you were watching the movie Aliens, and all of a sudden you were in the movie Aliens, now, wait a minute, I don't like scary movies anymore. Get me out of here. Like, they really have acid blood? No, I'm out. But it's that little tiny bit of separation that allows you to experience something and to be excited about it and to go, oh my gosh, what was that? Wow, what's that going to happen next? And if you can do that in your own life, where you see everything that's happening, you know that it's you and that you have total authority and control, but at the same time, there's just that little space where you can observe it from the ultimate reality, that transcendental consciousness of saying, understanding what reality is in its big picture form allows you to actually really be present and not be so concerned. Because if you were physically concerned for your safety, you wouldn't be able to enjoy a movie theater movie. You wouldn't be able to enjoy a movie at home. Like if you were actually afraid that something might actually kill you.
But yet we love the roller coaster.
It's because it's the immortal soul that you are having a physical experience. You love the roller coaster.
Why?
But if you forget that you're that immortal soul, the observer, then it becomes scary.
And that's what we seem to like, to push our limits.
Exactly.
We like to go to the limit.
And that's what I mean, is pushing the limits of integrity, of what's possible to achieve, what's possible to survive, what's possible to create, what's possible. Like any like a rat, a tiger, they got two lines. They're born and they're successful predators, or they're successful in surviving their environment, and they achieve experience and instincts, and they're always between those two lines. And a human being only has the bottom line. Because as spiritual beings, we are physically bounded, but mentally unbounded. We can think about atoms, and we can think about genes and cells and the body.
Why are we curious about anything?
When you look at energy, it expands exponentially. The field, right? That's that quantum mechanics. The physical you is relatively stationary, right, from your perspective. But the energy that is you is expanding exponentially, indefinitely. So what you're actually pulling in is that field. So that field that's expanding and expanding and expanding, just like starlight comes to us from thousands of light years away, or millions of light years away, or billions of light years away. That field of your experience is always expanding, and you're always kind of reaching out into that. Because that's what creates your physical particle self. Like your physical body.
Why are we reaching out? See, I'm going back. I keep going back to my intention
more like
thing.
It's
There's an intention to all this.
Mm-hmm.
What is that intention?
Well, you think of it in terms of reaching out, but when you have a thought, it's a thought flowing in. And when you look at atoms resonate at the same speed indefinitely. For as long as we've been observing them, and for as long as the universe has been around, they've been resonating because they're pulling energy in. They're not pushing it out into the universe. It's that energy that is the universe itself is flowing into you, flowing through you, and you're perceiving it as you're looking out. But if I look out and I see the camera, that's because light from the camera is flowing into my eyes.
But why are we doing it with a camera?
I think self-reflection is ultimately how all patterns are created.
And why are we self-reflecting?
Because that's what everything else is doing. It's if you were to blow a bubble in a room, it's going to reflect everything in the room, and any bubble that you blow in the room is going to reflect the room, but it's going to reflect it differently. And it's just about how energy flows in the environment.
And I'm saying, okay, entropy. I'll say it incorrectly. There's an agenda to life, to consciousness. There's an intelligence that can observe, and it doesn't just observe at the bubble and go, oh, we have the bubble going up in the air now. No, it goes, oh, yeah, now it's excited, and it wants to dance around with it. Mm-hmm. What is that spirit of play, of curiosity, of growth, of learning, of expanding, of reaching out, We're doing this for a reason.
Well, I think that's a great question. When you look at the human body, you have circulating energy, but all the energy isn't circulating in the same even size vein. So you get a smaller vein and you get higher frequency, and a larger vein you get a lower frequency. And so these frequencies, which they call chakras in the body, associate with different aspects of your consciousness. So some things are always prone towards observing pulling in certain frequencies of information. So as we focus the body and focus on different aspects of creation, we're going to notice different things. We're going to be pulling in different things. And it's just like music. It has to circulate in order for you to be alive. And how it circulates is how you experience your life and how harmoniously it circulates. And that combination of the harmony, which is that perfect sine wave, and the spontaneity of novelty, of creativity, of excitement, is really we're constantly floating between. We want to be certain, and we want to reveal the unknown, the uncertain. We want to realize new potentials. So we're always going to be kind of bouncing between those two things, because if everything was perfect, if I said, hey, all you got to do is sit in a room and I'll feed you, I'll give you water, you don't have to work, you don't have to do anything, all your bills will be paid, all you got to do is sit here, you get really bored really fast.
Because energy needs to move.
You want to be doing things.
Why energy needs to move? Energy. My girlfriend tells me that all the time. That's the whole basis of energy medicine is that if energy isn't moving, it's going to get stagnant and then disease develops. Mm-hmm. And so their whole job is to release the blocks so that the energy can flow. Mm-hmm. But what I'm inferring here is that if the energy's flowing, it's up to something. Maybe not just balance, maintaining balance, but I'm saying there's some kind of X factor here that creates the movement, the reason energy is moving. And what's it doing? What's its goal? Some hidden goal, maybe not so hidden. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is I want to bring it in relevance to unity. Mm-hmm. What unity is about is finding an understanding of life and being able to work with it in order to bring about something. There's a goal, there's an unseen goal, but unless we become conscious of that goal, we might just be wandering out and going, oh, look at the blue bubbles here, and oh, look at that atom, and bang, bang. There's no, what gives us excitement? What gives us passion? Those are the things that I believe the direction is all about. Makes life worth living. Mm-hmm. We want to go near death and challenge our situation so that we're excited. Do you see where I'm heading with this?
Yeah,
I'm just poking into the
kind of getting the ideas when you come close to dying, right? Is you get to the point of both realizing what you already have, and maybe you didn't take the time to really, like this. These are all the things that I'm really glad that I have, and also it encourages you. And it's something that I've said to people who've experienced trauma, where they say, "Oh, this happened to me, and that happened to me, and I wish I could have done something differently, and this, that, or the other." But the reality is, simply by surviving that, you have the courage and the strength to do so. And so as you experience fear, you develop courage. And as you experience love, you develop joy, that enjoyment. And courage is the ability to move forward, even if you're feeling some level of fear, and how you can actually expand your horizons past your own personal experience. Because however small or big your bubble is, that's your personal experience or your confidence level. So as you experience fear and you move past it, and you experience fear and you move past it, what you perceive as what's possible for you expands. And when you experience love, your experience of what's possible expands because of how you perceive what's there.
You know, I almost, and this is not true, I'm going to state a false, but yet at the same time I'm going to make a point. I don't even like the word love anymore, because what does that mean? You know, and now I'll tell you what it means, and now I'll erase what I just said. I don't believe in love, and mainly because there's not a cosmological understanding of what love is, so it's just become this word of kind of fluff ball, gentle lovingness. Okay, forget it. Love is, I think, the intention that I'm pointing at. For instance, why do you get off on science? Why do you get off on understanding all the mechanics of how it all works, and you begin to see the relationship of everything to everything, and you're starting to get a sense of autonomy. You go, your conclusion in your mind is, I'm beginning to understand what's going on here. Mm-hmm. That means that I could do something with my life. And you get excited about the things that you're learning. Those are the things you want to share, because they're giving you a sense of power, fulfillment, a sense of direction now, or a sense of destiny, that you have control, what you mentioned in the very beginning, a control over your destiny. Mm-hmm. You can shape your destiny when you have understanding, clarity, purpose, and know your own special makeup and what thrills you. Mm-hmm. And then you can, man, I love music, so I'm just learning music and I'll become a great musician someday. Mm-hmm. And that would just be everything.
Yeah.
And so that's the journey you're on.
Yeah.
Investigation into the nature of reality, science, and spirit. Mm-hmm. And that which we don't even understand. What is spirit? That's another word that I just kind of want to throw off to the side. We haven't seen it. We really can't even describe it. We understand atoms better than we do spirit.
I would absolutely say that that's true.
And I think that's why you like the atoms and the research of, wow, the field of the proton's different than the field around a neutron, and the smaller particle of the electron is different than the quarks, and all the breakup of the... It's like, oh my God, all this is all related, and it's all working together to make this reality, to make our bodies. Now what are we going to do with it now that we understand our body is made up of all this stuff? What are we up to? Where are we going? What's the universe all about? Who's God? Right. What is God? How are we related to God wanting to birth into the world and create?
I think that's an excellent question. And it's actually a question somebody else asked me. Well, who's in charge then? Because I started giving him an answer. Well, okay, well, who's in charge then?
Yeah.
And I would say that it's about a harmony between dimensions. Like, if you wanted to put, when I say dimensions, so think of your atomic level, and then atoms swirl around each other, creating revolutions. You could call it a day if you wanted. Mm-hmm. And then you get your genetic level.
Sure.
And they swirl around into spheres. You get a cellular level. They swirl around in a toroidal field, which is created by your heart, and you get another level. That swirls around inside of another toroidal field, which is the planet's magnetic field, the Schumann resonance, which is
galaxy,
and then the sun, which has the heliosphere, and then you have, the galaxy itself that we're all part of. So when you're talking about, well, who's in charge or what is God, imagine if I were to zoom down, make myself 50 trillion times smaller, and I tried to tell the cells of your body, you are part of a larger body. You're part of the God with the little g that is Daniel. And they would say, well, what does he look like? Well, he doesn't look like any of you. He's greater than you. He's outside of you. Because reality is the only thing that's keeping your cells in this shape is your heartbeat and your brain. Predominantly your heartbeat. Your brain stops and then your heart keeps going, you could sit in a coma for years and still be alive. And all the cells in your body would still be alive.
Maintained and balanced.
But they wouldn't be consciously integrated into a body that is you. Yeah. And so when you're talking about, well, what is God? Okay, I'm a cell of the planet. You're a cell of the planet. So for
What of
us,
the planet?
the planet, yeah, of course.
We're a what of the planet?
Cell.
Oh, cell of the
Right.
planet. Okay.
So if you look at us collectively, that is a greater consciousness. That is a greater body which we are a part of. You zoom out, now it's part of the solar system, a greater body of consciousness. You zoom out, it's part of the galaxy, a greater body of consciousness. You zoom out, it's part of the universe, a greater body of consciousness.
Okay, let's go back down to the earth body. And another thing you said when I first met you, you were talking about everything's holographic. So when we said, who's in charge, or what is God, or what is His will, what is His intention for all of this? If we knew what He was really wanting to see happen here, we could work in harmony with it. And you said, well, who's in charge? My thought originally in that moment was, we are. We are that spark where the intention of what we're up to and what all of this is up to. It's a hologram. So I therefore am a hologram of all that is. And so if I could go deep into myself and understand, what am I trying to do with my life? What am I up to? What am I getting out of it? What am I bringing forth in it?
I would ask the question simply, what do you ask of yourselves? You want them to be healthy?
Well, and
you want them to perform all their bodily tasks as they should, and you want them to work in harmony.
I'm saying that in a sense we're stopping short. God made a body. He made a body and said, okay, we got a body, let's maintain balance. Okay, great. But wait, there's something else involved. We're not happy with just being in harmony. We need this thing called growth. And growth only, at one point, maybe just comes from creation itself. I'm going to put these pieces together and put them all up and go, whoa, look at that, that's beautiful. Somehow creation itself is the movement of this energy in this direction of bringing more. It's not just happy with what is, it wants to bring forth and create something. And I don't know why now, see, I'm stuck on this concept of what is it that the essence of life, or the creator, or my hologram that I'm connected to, what is it up to? Just maintaining harmony? Or is there a direction of creation that sooner or later the whole universe is going to be filled with beings from one end of the trillion galaxies to the other end, and we're going to be able to fly through space at twice the speed of light, or even if we're just going the speed of light, at least we'll get there a second from now, because time stops at the speed of light, so we could be instantly transformed, going everywhere and visiting all these people and learning their cultures and growing and exploring curiosity. I'm beginning to get the grasp here. Beingness itself is not a static thing. It's an active, growing, creating, exploring, curious. It has an agenda to life.
Well, and I think that physically we try to expand, or we mentally try to expand.
Right.
And so the physical aspect is creating things, and it's wanting to own things. But the spiritual aspect is to be able to observe creation, and they be able to observe creators. And it's kind of, I think ultimately it's finding the balance of like losing the jealousy of what other people are able to do, so that we can fully manifest what we're able to do. So it's if you look at it from, say we go to another planet, that's essentially the planet reproducing another planet. Because we're not just going to go to a planet and sit on a rock. We're going to go to the planet and try and recreate this. But every time you recreate it, just like if you had a kid, every time you recreate a planet, it's never going to be the same. Every time you recreate a person, like your son is mostly you, right? Is half you. But even if you sent him at the very beginning of your life and had him walk in your shoes instead of you, he wouldn't be the same person.
Right.
So if you were to put yourself in the same position as him, you wouldn't even be the same person as him. So you're talking about the act of creation is both intellectual and emotional and physical. So as you go to the next generation, you could tell him everything that you know, and he may never choose to do a single thing the same as you.
Sure. Now, I think it's the diversity then. So we don't need to be in competition with one another, anybody. Because we can appreciate the unique diversity that's coming from every area. We can praise each other and be grateful towards each other that you have something totally unique and different in your expression and what you're bringing into existence, so that our gratitude of, wow, man, I'm loving your insights. I'm loving the way you're exploring reality. I love the way your song is happening.
Yeah. Well, and you know, since you're a musician, just to imagine the idea of if you write a song and it's magnificent, people could praise you, people could hate you out of jealousy, just because they wish they could play, or they wish they had some song to sing, or they could mimic you. Now, pretty much nobody is going to be able to copy you as you, but they could try. And that's like one form of copying, and then you have remixes.
Or maybe they learn to play music for themselves, like, hey, look, I've learned it, I spent some time doing it, I can show you some tricks to where you can find your unique contribution.
Well, and it's just like a remix. A song, you could make a song, then somebody could make a remix and remix and remix and remix. And by the time you've made 5 songs that have all been remixed, you have this song that, first of all, is very unique compared to the other songs and would never have existed if it weren't for that first one.
Replicating our uniqueness. Replicating our uniqueness. I think I've almost found a new definition for love.
Right.
And it's kind of like the unified field theory of life, you know. We have quarks, and they interact, and they don't live very long unless they're in relationship to something else, and then they create a proton, and then you break those up, and the little electrons are going around. Everything has a unique part in the building blocks of existence. So we can't say, well, I don't like quarks. You know, they're mostly right-handed, you know.
Yeah.
I get that. No, I'm happy for quarks.
Yeah.
I need that electron.
Yeah, you need all your different instruments in order to have an orchestra.
And as you see, I get excited about stuff. That's kind of my nature. People tend not to like that, but I can't help it. And instead of suppressing myself, I just go ahead and block out the lack of other people's way of being enthusiastic about it.
Right, the lack of support.
That's right. I've been in conversations for day and night and day and night and day and night. You know, drank a lot of coffee and stayed up. I even stayed up a week one time.
Yeah.
Now I did take a little speed or something, something to stay up, but was so involved in this process that happens in the sharing that the insights start coming to mind. You know, you get an insight. Like I just got the insight, you know, earlier about beingness itself. We're a hologram of the great being that is creating all this, but it has an intention of replicating itself, but growing itself into much more than just a static universe. It's like, wow, you saw this vision of a universe filled with diversity and intelligence and all working harmoniously together.
Yeah.
Of course, he was riding by in his spacecraft and looked at Earth and went, uh-oh, I got to get down there and make a difference.
Oh, no, these kids are out of control. It's
That's
like,
right.
It's like the Lord of the Flies on steroids. You just come here, you're like, oh my, who's in charge? What's going on?
Yeah.
Where are all the spiritual adults at? How long have you been on this island by yourself?
Yeah. Now, hopefully they're not like what we are afraid might happen, which is God's going to come back and go, well, this is a failed experiment. I'm going to wipe the earth and start all over.
I
No,
think
I don't
every
it's gonna happen.
child would feel that way. Imagine if you were in your dad's house and you had a party, it got out of control. There's way too many people there. You don't even know how to get rid of them anymore. They
Right.
won't listen to you. The house, like parts of it is on fire. Other parts are like getting just traipsed in mud. Oh, they just knocked down a wall. Oh, my dad's gonna kill me.
Yeah. Right. Yeah,
Dad
yeah.
is gonna kill me. But the reality is, when you look at the ultimate creative potential of human beings, once they fully embody energy primarily, which is that spirit, and physicality as a secondary. If you could make a solar system, literally just taking 0-point field energy, and you could make a sun, and you could make planets, and you could terraform, because you understood that genetics and all that is just subtle vibrations. If you understood that you could cultivate life with cymatics, with music, if you understood that you could cultivate all these things, would you come back and actually be that mad? If you could build another planet, if you could build another solar system, would you go and just start lopping heads off? Or would you actually take the time to say, hey, whoa, you're actually clearly in need of judgment.
Right.
You're clearly in need of judgment. And if you've been around, maybe, what if you'd created 1,000 planets? Are you going to freak out because this one that's off over yonder, kind of minding its own business, is falling apart? Why? Why would you be that upset about it? It's thinking about it from the limited mindset of, this is the only planet we know. And if this one goes bad, we're done. And that's, from a certain vantage point, is true. If you were a little kid in the house and you burned down the house, how many more years before you could build or buy another one? Would you survive? But what if you were an adult and your house was burning? What if one of your kids set it on fire? Are you going to leave him inside because he set your house on fire? And say, nah, I don't care if I can build another house. You burn down my house, you could burn with it. I think there's a lot of fear from that, and it just comes from being very physically grounded and not even understanding how it's possible for a planet to be constructed, not even understanding how it's possible for life and terraformation to take possible, and just being afraid of not being able to make it up, of not being able to fix your mistake, and feeling like you're in a position where you're going to be punished beyond a price that you can bear. And I don't think that that's the case. I really don't, because honestly, it's just like a game to me. I want to see how much I can fix as much as other people want to see how much they can
Things
break.
stay in balance. Even if it gets out of balance, then it's all part of the growth process.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's getting out of balance. Well, then it swings over this way, and then it pulls everything back, and it keeps growing. I'm getting this weird concept that God is creating all of this to inhabit it and enjoy it.
Absolutely.
Like it says several times in the Bible that when the earth was terraformed, that the angels were rejoicing.
Mm-hmm.
They were going, wow, great job, to God. I'm sure it wasn't like that, but they were joyous.
The golf clap.
That's right. Yeah, they rejoiced together.
Hole in one, God, nicely done.
So somehow this joy is an important factor in the essence of being and why we're alive and why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. And I was just talking about this earlier. If you imagine life was a dream, say it's something Alan Watts said, so I'll paraphrase it poorly, but what he was talking about was if you could go to sleep at night and stretch that night out into 70 or 80 years. He says at first you'd be dancing and you'd be singing, you'd be playing, you'd be having wild parties, and you'd be doing all this stuff. He says, but eventually that would get boring. And eventually you would become the character that was going into the more nightmarish situations to fight dragons and rescue princesses and, fight your arch nemesis. And I think ultimately that's what we're in. We're in a lucid dreaming experience where, like you said, your free will allows you to make any choice within that experience. And the dream itself is sort of like subtly shifting continuously all the time. And you can come into those situations and you can either buy into the chaos, which is just like following the violence and being part of playing that character, or you can go into that same dream and you say, I'm going to be the hero. And it's just your level of dedication to self-preservation. Because say we're in a dream right now, it's not a very pleasant one. I mean, it's okay. It's not very pleasant. When you look at the grand scope of things, there's a lot of things that are going wrong. But at the same time, if you were in a nightmare and you knew that you were dreaming, what would stop you from being the good guy? What would stop you from being, so hey, if you don't stop, we're going to kill you. You're going to wake up in another dream. It's probably going to be a lot more pleasant. What's the motivation to be afraid of moving into that change headlong? Or is it more like an excitement of like, hey, I'm going to see how high up on this giant tidal wave of change that's coming our way.
Change, yes, that's right, change.
And that's really
growth.
Yeah.
Growth is change.
It's just like the ocean churns up everything.
You paint one painting, okay, we're done with that one, let's move on to another one.
Exactly. And it's that embracing, because, when you're talking about art, it's creating that change where there's always that friction, that resistance, and then there's an acceptance that sort of flows into it after a period of time. And I think that the people that are more filled with courage are going to take advantage of the challenging circumstances, those negative circumstances. And the people that are more curious are more adept in the exploratory, like, what is this? How's it going? Because it's like at first you're curious, you develop, you like babies, they want to touch and taste everything. And then it's after you've moved past curiosity, now it's courage. What are you brave enough to go do? Like with these things that you've gathered, with these things that you've learned. So I think that that's ultimately kind of what we're coming into, is there's been all this exploration and there just needs to be courage because we've gathered all these things. And courage is the ability to let it go and move past your comfort zone. Move out of that where you know the answer, to go find the answer that you don't already know. To go push the limit that you haven't already defined.
Is that what inspires you?
I think that ultimately, like my life is, a lot of that has been kind of trying to define something that was almost undefinable, of just saying, this is kind of how I relate to spirituality, this is how I relate to this spiritual experience. And it is like, it's emotionally rooted, but it's also very logically stepped.
In other words, you're replicating yourself and constantly turning yourself inside out. You research and you go, oh, wow, that's neat. I got to tell it to somebody. Hey, what do you think of this? Oh, you excited about it? Great, fabulous. Mm-hmm. So it's the sharing, connecting, growing, curious, learning, assimilating. All of this is all happening at the same time. The unified field theory now describes the E8, which is basically this multi-dimensional structure, very similar to and that's just a two-dimensional mandala. Mm-hmm. The mandala of existence is multi-dimensional. It's let's just say it's round, and the mandala changes shape as you go around here. You go, oh my gosh, it's a whole different thing over here. Look at that. Oh my gosh, this is a different view of the one thing that's multi-dimensional.
And it is interesting that way, because it's like it's a bubble and bubble and bubble and bubble. So you just have multiple. So it's like if you're looking at it from the outside, you see one thing. If you look at it from any of the other observing positions, you're going to see something different. And if you were to move in to that first bubble, and you were to look out, you would see something different than if you were looking in.
Right. So we're all unique with our own particular view of the universe from where we are.
Exactly.
And to share that is merely like light needs to shine.
Exactly.
Light needs to shine. Life needs to live. It needs to grow. It needs to be curious. It's all of these things all wrapped up into essence.
Yeah, because ultimately there is no growth without connection. I could learn whatever I want to learn in science, but if I never share it, if I never make the connection to teach someone, younger, older, peers, science didn't really grow.
Right.
Or how would you ever know if it did?
Yeah.
Because it's the collective consciousness that we base everything off of. That's how we base where humanity is at, is the collective consciousness. So it doesn't really matter what I do, because until it's shared, it's not realized.
Okay, good. Then we've finally come home. We've gone full circle here. What are we up to? We were sharing to connect, to be able to bring forth who you are. I wasn't supposed to do much talking. I wanted to listen, but I get excited, and want to chip in too. And I just hope that maybe next time we'll deal in the scientific exploration a little more than the theoretical discussion of spirit and how it relates to life. Spirit's so undefinable unless you start talking chakras and energies working in there, and you have a keen mind for exploration into all the different principles that make life work in the invisible that we can't see.
Yeah.
And I saw it that time when you were giving your workshop here. It was fabulous. It was like, oh my God, that guy's going for it. Go for it.
He's doing it. He's doing it.
Do it.
Yeah, I'm going to work on that to break it down into smaller, kind of more manageable chunks.
Sure.
To make it a little bit less of a fire hose experiment. How much can you drink?
No, but you were meant for it. I could see it right, and I heard that was your first time. And you are meant for it. So I'm here to encourage you to keep it up, because it brings joy to me to watch and listen. Okay?
Thank you.
Just as tonight to explore on a person-to-person basis with you, I just want you to know that I'm really looking forward to seeing what happens with you in the future.
I think that it's going to be a lot of exciting stuff, and I just want to. Ultimately my goal is, by the time my niece and nephew, they're 9 and 11 now, reach my age, there's not going to be all this like massive confusion about everything.
Right.
About everything. So I wanted to create something that people can relate to, that's tangible.
Yeah. My son and I have deep talks all the time. And he's like a chip off the old block. And I think that the next generation can go beyond where we've gone.
Oh, absolutely.
He's already, in fact, when he was 6 years old, he was speaking these revelatory things that it was like, how do you know all this stuff? It took me all these years to figure this out. But he'd already been grasping. Yeah. So.
Well, and I think that's important. I don't have any kids. I don't have any plans to have any kids.
What?
But what I would like is that every child be better than me. Because I think that's what it means to be a planetary conscience person, is that you're, and it's one of the things that's always sort of like bewildered me about. I was raised Catholic, and they're like, you're a sinner, and they're like, they're like, I'm your father, you're a sinner, this, that, and the other, and it was just kind of like, my dad was always very much the opposite. He's always been respected, but he was always like, I want you to be smarter, I want you to be stronger, I want you to be better than me in every way that I am able to help you do that. And so ultimately that's my goal, is to help people, especially younger people, become better than me.
And you can see, you're just a chip off the old block. Because I can see that with your dad. He cares, he loves, he takes a great joy in watching you grow and become, and you're becoming Maybe that's the thing. We're becoming. What's the agenda of the universe? It's becoming. We shall see.
Right. I'm becoming a flower. Oh no, I have seeds. Now I'm dying.
Well, I've left a few seeds to grow. Keep it out, keep it alive, guys.
And I think that's that's really important, is to kind of like break down, and that's probably part of the reason why I don't plan on having kids, is I just treat all kids like they're my kids.
Yeah.
It's really frustrating sometimes. When I'm just like, if you were my kid. But
well, when you have your own kids, every other kid could be a brat. It's like, well, look at that brat over here. My son doesn't do that.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right.
I want to avoid that. I just, I really do think that's kind of what's missing, and what I wish would really sort of fall away is the, people are, there's that genetic heritage, and then there's also the mental, emotional heritage that we get. And I think that the mental, emotional heritage that we get from the people who raise us is as important as the genetic heritage, because the mental, emotional determines your future, and your genetic is sort of like what you're anchored into already.
Yeah, it's kind of like there's a nuclear force, there's the weak and strong force, there's gravity, there's radiation, there's all these different levels, and you're saying emotion as being one of those subset parts of the relationship of all these different phenomena going on.
In the human body, if you look at anger is produced as an emotional response. It affects your entire cardiovascular system. That's what triggers your fight or flight response. But the more important thing is there's an impulse, an electrical impulse that goes through your heart for every single heartbeat. And depending on the emotion that you experience, what I mean by love is you actually have a rounded wave. You have a sine wave. And that actually creates a genetic response, that creates a cellular response, that creates a cardiovascular response. It affects your immune system. It literally affects every single aspect of your body. So when I say emotions, I literally mean there's that wave, that field that is circulating through and around your body, and your emotions is how that field is moving. Because it's always moving roughly around the same pace unless you get really elevated heartbeat.
Right.
But the how it moves through the field is very, very, very subtly responsive to your emotions.
Yeah, I was just seeing something about that today, that the field of the heart and all that, the electromagnetic, is 12 feet outside of your body. So when you're in a room with people, all your fields of the heart is together.
Yeah, like magnets.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And so if we can align those hearts right, we can accomplish it more together than we can alone.
Yeah, it's like if you were polar opposite of somebody, which means that you're not in alignment. It's like you're like,
right.
Give that person a hug. No, I don't want to hug that person.
Right. Well, that's what, we started out with that. That there's some people you just can't quite, find their vibration doesn't quite match.
Yeah.
Well, then don't even try.
Yeah.
Just move on. Or look at it as an opportunity to explore things that are difficult, and then maybe you'll get a whole different growth of understanding out of it.
It's you don't like in other people what you don't like in yourself. So whatever it is that you don't like in other people, just show love for that part of yourself. If somebody's really selfish, man, I'm glad that I'm so generous. Just say the opposite. I'm happy that I'm so generous, and I love the fact that I'm generous. Because what you're actually saying is, I don't like selfish people. But you don't actually have to make it about them at all. Hey, I love me because of this thing that I like about me. I don't have to dislike them. Because in order for me to dislike you, I have to create that in myself. And then I project it to you.
Yeah, and I'm likable, so.
Right.
Well, look, it's good. I welcome you and look forward to your journey. I'm going to be tuning in once in a while. And if you ever have anything you want to share about the molecular structure related to the, feel free to call me and we'll put it on the air.
Beautiful.
And maybe we can make diagrams and show some of your interesting works that you've created.
Yeah. What I'll probably end up doing is breaking the the 6 seeds to heaven down into probably 4 or 5 classes.
Okay.
And actually just kind of break it down. We'll get them recorded.
That's the job. You learn, you get all this stuff, and then you organize it and
put it in a way that people can digest it.
Right.
It's got to like chew it up for the little baby
That's
birds.
right. Here, I can't. You're going to eat an elephant one bite at a time, not eat the whole
Here's
thing
a
at one
blender.
time. Let's speed up the